So May 12th today, May 12th, 2025, we are discussing Parshat Emor. Parshat Emor, which has within it a number of important, uh, sections. One section on the Kohanim to begin with, what are specific rules relating to them. Another which is familiar to us because it is the portions that are read on holidays. It's the sacred calendar of Israel, Ela Moadei Adonai, the special holidays of God, and they're arranged with orientation towards holy convocation, Mikra e Kodesh. Since the whole book of Vayikra is so focused on Kiddushah, holiness, these are the sacred days, the holy days, days that people gather and people are organized in these different celebrations. Uh, should point out that there are seven of them, which shouldn't surprise us. And in the seventh month of the year, most of these or many holidays occur. So the 7 months, seven holidays. I did this once and I made a mistake, but
Mhm.
we did. So we got first day of Pesach, seventh day of Pesach, Shavuot, which is one day in the Bible, first day of one day of Rosh Hashanah, one day of Yom Kippur, first day of Sukkot, and the eighth day of Sukkot. That's seven holidays of God, and the seventh month has the most of those holidays, namely Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, first day of Sukkot, last day of Sukkot. So there are four special occasions in the seventh month, and of the other 7 months, the first of the 7 months has two, and it would be the third month that would have just one, which is Shavuot. Shavuot is coming up. We counted last night 4 weeks of the Omer, the 28th day of the Omer. So we are 3 weeks away from Shavuot, which is hard to believe, which means that we'll have our all-night session, and then who knows what. Okay, all right. But there is a
Ice cream. Ice cream. We know what.
there you go. There is an interesting passage that is located at the end of the parasha, and we've studied it in the past. It is, I think, I don't want to say the only story, the only narrative that takes place in Vayikra, because the story of Aaron and his sons is a story. It's a catastrophe that takes place. This story, while not catastrophic in the sense that it was catastrophic for the whole nation. I mean, it was catastrophic for the individual who was executed. He, um, but it is an important moment in the story. We'll have to take a look. And what I want to do with this story is, I want to, as much as talk about the story, I want to just illustrate a method of reading the story, or just even ask some questions about it, because as usual, we want to read these passages not the way we always read them, but with a little eye to something new. I'm so committed to the idea study should always contain an innovation. In Torah beli chidush, there should always be some kind of innovation or some kind of new experience when you study the Torah. So it's possible that something that you've read 100 times before, for it to have some kind of new concept or idea, and I think I have one of those. At least for me, it seemed to be an idea that is new, or at least more clarified. And I will begin with the story. So let me pull up the story. There's no news here. let us, let me get the text ready. And here we go. Okay. So you can see what has preceded this. We have the whole list of holidays, and the menorah. There's this whole a section on V'ikhu elech Hashem and zayit zach, take pure olive oil. Leviticus 23 is the holiday calendar. This verse, Basukot teshu shivat yamim, you shall stay in huts for 7 days, and etc. And then we have this small section on the lighting of the menorah, and then a small discussion of an offering, and now here it is. In the middle of all this, you have this passage. Ve'elech ben isha Yisraelit. Now the son of an Israelite woman went out. V'hu ben ish Mitzri. He was also the son of an Egyptian man. B'toch b'nei Yisrael, into the children of Israel. Vayinatzu b'machaneh, and they scuffled in the camp. Ben ha-Yisraelit v'ish ha-Yisraeli, the son of the Israelite woman and the fully Israelite man. Vayikov ben ha-Isha Yisraelit et Hashem vayikalel. Now the son of the Israelite woman reviled the name and insulted it. Vayaviu oto el Moshe. So they brought him to Moses. V'shem Emor Shlomit bat Divri l'matei Dan. And the name of his mother was Shlomit, daughter of Divri, son of tribe of Dan. Vayinichu b'mishmar, and they put him in guard. Lifrosh lahem alma al pi Adonai, to clarify it for them by order of God. So here it comes. Vayidaber Adonai al Moshe lemor. God spoke to Moses, saying, "Hotzeh et hamekalel el mechutz lamachaneh." Take the insulter, and samchu et kol hashomim et yedehem al rosho, that all those who heard the curse lean their hands on his head, v'ragmu oto kol ha'ida, and let the entire community pelt him. Vel b'nei Yisrael tedaber lemor, and to the children of Israel you are to speak, saying, Ish ish ki yikalel Elohav v'nasacheto. Anyone who insults his God, he shall bear his sin. V'nokev shem Adonai mot yumat. Whoever blasphemes the name of God shall be put to death. Yirgamu ragom yirgamu vo kol ha'ida. The community is to pelt him. Kager kezrach benakvo shem yumat. As the sojourner, so the native, when he reviles the name, he is to be put to death. Now a man, when he strikes down human life, he's to be put to death. Yes, death. Mot yumat. Mokeh nefesh be'ema yishalmena. One who strikes the life of an animal is to pay for it. Nefesh tachat nefesh. Life for life. Ish ki ten mumba mito. Man, when he causes a defect in his fellow, as he has done, thus is to be done to him. Shever tachat shever, ayin tachat ayin, shein tachat shein. Break eye in place of eye, tooth in place of tooth, as he has caused a defect in order in another human, thus it is to be caused in him. Whoever strikes down an animal is to pay for it, but one who strikes down a human is to be put to death. One standard of judgment shall there be for you, as the sojourner, so thou shall native be, for I am the Lord your God. And so, Vayidaber Moshe b'nei Yisrael, Moses spoke to the children of Israel, V'yotziu et hamekalel, they took out the insulter, Amlichutz lamachaneh, outside the camp, Vayirgamu oto aven, they pelted him with stones, Uvnei Yisrael asu, and the children of Israel did, Kasher tziva Adonai et Moshe, as God commanded Moses. So I, I read the story, and I, on the one hand, uh, I'm so inclined to see some literary aspects of the story and ask, what is it doing as a story? I have an initial response of of I don't want to say revulsion, but of horror, um, and that is an instinctive reaction to this, which only invites self-analysis as to what is horrifying about it and the violence that's in it, which encourages me, as always, when reading and discussing stories, to try and identify all the elements of the story, namely all the characters of the story, and to ask what is going on with each character, and to leap into empathy with each character, such that my understanding is a little deeper, even though we're so removed from the context. Um, it's very hard to understand it. However, I do think the exercise of trying to understand these characters and what is between all of them is a very, very useful exercise, because in the end we may discover things about ourselves. Um, and so I assume that my reaction is probably very similar to your reactions. That that if you were to just kind of receive a story like this in the way that I just told it to you, you would respond with a mixture of curiosity and horror. Um, and so that, putting that on one side, the Bible person in me is going to, will say something as follows. Um, and you've heard me say this before, which is that there is an organization to the first several books of the Torah. I have this book I've quoted it from before. It's called "The Unity of the Hebrew Bible," David Noel Friedman, in which he offers the following uh, hypothesis. He says that the first nine books of the Bible are loosely organized around the Ten Commandments, or that they contain within them consecutively a violation of the commandments. So, for example, in uh, the we have the Ten Commandments. The first commandment is, "You shall not do not worship idols." So, what's the major violation in the book of Exodus? The golden calf. This is the next book. One second, Annette. The major violation in the book of Vayikra is this moment where this person blasphemes God. The major violation in the book of Numbers is someone gathering sticks on Shabbat. The major violation in the book of Deuteronomy is a theoretical violation of where someone is so it's so extremely violates the honor of parents. It's the rebellious child. And on to stealing, killing, adultery with the case of David and Bathsheba, false witness, and coveting. So those are the commandments. And here, this story corresponds to the violation of the commandment not to misuse God's name. I'll pause there. Go ahead, Nanette. You have to unmute.
Well, actually, Rabbi, so you actually said what I was going to say. What I was going to say is, why should we be shocked? Why are you shocked and horrified? There's a lot of violence in the Bible. Number one. Number two, I was going to use the example what you said that guy, I think in Numbers, he violated Shabbat
But
with
yes,
the
and they stoned him also. Well,
yes.
I still want to maintain my humanity here, and I am shocked by killing and violence, even if it's the execution of a sentence in the prosecution of justice here. Um, it's one thing to say you are to be sentenced to death, and then it's another thing when the person who is sentenced is executed. Um, I think I have, like every one of us, a natural um, horror at seeing someone killed. I mean, we've seen plenty of movies in which people have been shot and killed, and etc., and plenty of documentaries, where this is reported, and there is a certain kind of curiosity and also horror at this. It's just why, you know, it's something that we we need to guard against, or we need to be, we have to kind of understand that in witnessing this, it will affect us. There are plenty of violent scenes that people are subjected to, I would say, on a daily basis. I don't want to make light of it, but part of what engages people in sport, in being a spectator to sport, is that the environment on the field or on the ice is a controlled environment. But when it goes when it gets violent, people get excited. You see this most in hockey, because in hockey, this is part of the game. This has become part of the game, for, I mean, decades, since there has been hockey. And you have to stop and ask, what is going on here? What's going on in the on the ice, and what's going on in the stadium, in the arena when this happens? Why is it that people all of a sudden move to the edge of their seat when a fight breaks out? Why is it that they stop the camera? Why is it that the people taking the video of the game will focus on that and will replay it and replay it and replay it and replay it, and you'll see slow motion of people punching each other, and often getting violent. Sometimes there have been players carried out unconscious from a fight on the ice, and you have to ask yourself, what is it that I know what's going on the ice. They get angry. They somebody bumped someone, and it's a whole process. But I'm looking at myself, and I'm also looking at the people in the arena with me, and there is a certain revulsion at the fact that we love this, and that we are so curious about it. And at this moment, what is erupting is really a different kind of drama, the drama of our humanity. I'm thinking about it in these deep terms, because I find, I don't want to be, give myself credit or claim to be more pious or righteous than anyone. I truly want to shield myself from this, because I think that it is psychically damaging to watch violent scenes all the time, or maybe not. I don't know if you have any reactions to this, but that's, there is a prurient curiosity to these details that I mean, this story invited me to comment on it, for the reason that it raises in front of me this whole question of the violent reaction of a community to what is ostensibly a kind of emotional outburst, or maybe not. I don't know. We do need to analyze what is it that is going through the mind of the cursor, and what is the nature of the infraction that the cursor has committed. Why does this person deserve to be executed? Moralana, go ahead.
Uh, I would want to know why he had this attitude towards God, to make him curse him. It doesn't say why did he do it? I mean, before you kill somebody, shouldn't you investigate a little bit or
Sure, absolutely. So in a way, we want to justify, not justify. We want to understand him.
understand? Yeah.
We want to understand him, and I think that that's a natural inclination here in the reading of this passage, and it's to understand that a person who says this, it's not that he's denying his faith. Like he's not saying, "Ah, there's no God." That's not cursing God, and he's not. It's not that he's arguing with God, because plenty of the biblical characters argue with God all the time. Abraham argued with God. Certainly Moses argues with God. It's not that they don't. That the issue is not God is always right and we have to obey. It must be something deeper than that. But that's where midrash comes in. I'm going to leave the midrash out of this because for us it may not be necessary. Okay, um, but I'm going to just try and ask some of those questions that we've been asking, but just on the nature of the violent, the execution. Uh, it does pull us because we are all of us, I think, very curious about the line between life and death and the line between what is you know uh, um, I want to say animal and human behavior, um, and human and not, and what is where violence is, and it's not so far from every one of us. Go ahead, Stanley.
Well, just to pick up on what you've just said, um, and to think of this in a Freudian way, you're saying that violence is not very far away from any of us, that it is part and parcel of our nature. So Freud, of course, emphasized the drives of sex and aggression, and that
Yeah,
a lot in human behavior can be understood as expressions of this. Now, what you hope is that there are various degrees of sublimation. That is, the aggressive drives come out in a pro-social way. So that sports is, depending on the sport, is somewhere in between. Boxing, not so sublimated. Hockey, also not so sublimated, but maybe more so than hockey. So, he wouldn't be surprised by this in that sense. And that's one way of understanding it or looking at it. Now, in terms of I think it's a very important and fundamental question of why a person who blasphemes God should deserve to die. So my thought is, and it's probably not original with me, is that here was this sort of ragtag group of people, and they were trying to establish a religion, and that somehow, in order to be able to do this, there had to be really a seriousness about it to show that this is important. There are certain things you can do and certain things you can't do, and that in the formation you have to be more severe. And then, as we know, the rabbis eased up on this considerably. That is, they wouldn't. My understanding is that they rarely executed someone for gathering sticks or whether it was blaspheming God, so that they understood there was something off about this. But just in trying to understand it, I that's how I.
well, I think what you've touched on is you're asking the question what it's not you're not saying no, what's so bad about blasphemy? We all blaspheme. But it's what is it about blasphemy that goes to the core of the security of this people at
Yeah,
this very, very delicate stage of their formation? And I think that's a terribly urgent question. There's a lot of urgency in that question because it not only goes to that period and that time, it really will go to all periods and all time, to the extent that people will ask what kind of behavior imperils the whole community, and you could give not violent examples, but I'll give you examples from the world of, organizations and marketing and branding, which is there are behaviors that damage a brand of a company to the extent that it could actually kill the company, and ruin it, forever. Go ahead, Bob.
I just have two questions. One is, what makes this form of blasphemy different than Lashon Hara in
Why?
terms of the person being
מה
sent out of,
נשתנה הבlasphemy הזה
I
מכל...
mean, he's being put outside the camp, which was, there's no tzarach, but I'm just wondering that. My second question is, what is the meaning of everybody putting their hands on the individual, which before was only the Kohen Gadols and the others, right?
Sure. So I think we could make the case that harming an individual, while severe, the community has to kind of process that in the way that communities process information, and it's like, it's constantly blending, this with its own survival instincts and how it assembles its understanding of the world. That's the manishtana. In terms of the placing of the hands on it, there is a technical aspect to placing of the hands, which is, it's not that it's ownership and it's not that it's transference, but it's the act of designation, and it has to do with the fact, and we'll read it closely in a second, that the individuals who are most affected by it have to, do some kind of physical. It's a kind of purging. That is to say, their physical act of putting their hands on the head of the blasphemer, in a sense, designates that individual as the individual who bears the terrible guilt. And I'm tempted, and here again I have to kind of reopen some of these, the philosophy of René Girard, who is a French philosopher who talks a lot about the scapegoat, and has that the scapegoat mechanism is the mechanism for preserving the kind of safety of the whole. That if you designate someone to be sacrificed, then at least the anger of the deity will subside. There's what to be said for that, or there's what to be said for the communal strife will reset itself, and he sees this in a kind of cycle of violence and the sacred, that within societies or outside of society, when societies are in a terrible moment of conflict, violence will invariably solve the conflict, in the sense that it will bring the conflict to its conclusion, and then there'll be a reset after violence. We see that in the most extreme sense with war. War is when all communication, all interaction breaks down. There's a outpouring of violence. People die. The sacrifice in blood is made, and eventually these societies, while may not necessarily move to peace, move to a certain kind of new equilibrium, and we're seeing that now unfolding in real time, in the events that we are deeply connected to. Okay, any other comments? Go ahead, Nanette. You have to unmute.
Um, I like what you said, Rabbi. I like what Stanley said. Can I throw the word in fear? Because
Fear.
people, I cannot think about our awful history in the United States about slavery. I mean, people did not want to get whipped. People did not want pain.
Right.
So I
Yeah.
want to just throw the word in fear, because people, they don't, to make people behave, uh,
You
is the
have to
word
warn
fear.
them. And there is something to be said for that. And, notwithstanding the fact that no matter how much you warn people, they'll still break barriers and reap the consequences. That's just part of human behavior. All right, we'll go on here. I'm going to uh, so here we go. I want to look at the text now in in a closer way and ask the questions on the text and show how the text itself will lend itself to a lot of different kinds of questions. I'm just making it large enough so that we can see on the screen. And here we go. Okay, so just a second. Get this set up properly. Here we go. All right. So I have here the text, and I don't have the translation. I'll read the Hebrew and translate it orally, and then ask the question, which you see on the right side, which is, Vayetze ben Isha Yisraelit. That already is interesting. Vayetze means he goes out. So the question is, why? What did he go out of? And what is it? What are we talking about here? What does it mean that a person goes out? And why is it identifying itself in such a way? We are identifying the individual Ben Isha Yisraelit. So that already raises a question, which is, what about his father? Well, we get the answer in the next piece of the verse. V'hu Ben Ish Mitzri. He is the son of an Egyptian. Okay. So now,
but he's Jewish because his mother is Jewish.
well, I'm going to close the screen here because what we now have a story. This is what I love about the Bible is that in 6 words we get a whole story. A son of an Israelite woman went out. He is also the son of an Egyptian man. So, and Alana says he is, quote, Jewish. We know, of course, what you mean by that. He will be defined by his mother's ancestry, which I have to put like a footnote in brackets here. The idea of matrilineality is something that emerges later in Jewish religion. Although here this is a beautiful case where you could say, well, that means that this individual is an Israelite. You could make, at this stage in the Bible, you could make the equivalent case that he is not an Israelite. Patrilineality and matrilineality only comes into force well beyond in the period right after the biblical period. Okay, so maybe 100 or so, a couple of centuries after this. Okay, for lots of reasons which I need to review, but they have to do with economics also. You could the compelling question is, what do you do with a person of mixed parentage? That's question number 1. Question number 2, from a purely historical, cultural perspective, isn't it interesting? Isn't it interesting that among the people who left Egypt were women who married Egyptians? What does that mean? What does it mean that this woman had produced a child with I don't want to say that we don't know if it's a marriage, but they obviously cohabited to produce a child of mixed parentage. So, Ilana, you have a reaction to that? Yeah, go ahead.
I think you mentioned Vayetze. Maybe he came out of his religion and converted.
Okay, so now we're into the imaginative realm, which is beautiful. I mean, we could invent for our sake, many different kinds of scenarios here, and that's, I think, what is being called. We're being called upon to try and find plausible reasons for this individual to have this kind of reaction, including what I would say is something that might be the most plausible, which is, who am I? Where do I belong? My mother is Israelite, my father's Egyptian. Everybody here is, well, there are of course other people that belong to my category. They're not identified in the story, but we have to imagine that this person is not the only child of an Egyptian father. Where do we belong in this covenantal union? Are we part of the covenant or are we not? Are we circumcised or are we not? Patrilineal, matrilineal, yes. So Judaism today says you're Jewish, not to worry, no issue. But there is no Judaism then. There is no halakha then. There is simply a lot of questions. I mean, to me, it's such a great moment that indicates it's like a snapshot of a problem that emerges right at the beginning, which is how do you deal with a person like that? Susie, go ahead.
And so there's a few things I was going to say which are kind of brought up along the way. So we don't know what the relationship was between this woman and the father of this Ish.
Yeah.
And we certainly know that slave owners produce children with their slaves.
Okay.
Vayetze doesn't, could mean other things besides he took a walk. It could, mean, kind of an existential kind of, leaving. The other thing is, I find it interesting that it says that Ben Isha Yisraelit and Ben Ish Mitzri, they're not together in syntactically.
Nice. Okay. So again, we
I
are.
don't know what that's about.
we have a lot of questions, about this relationship. Are they together? Are they not together? And does that mean, is that giving us a hint as to why this individual is going out? Is this individual is engaged in some kind of conflict because he's fighting with another Israelite, and in the course of the fight will curse God? John, go ahead.
Well, again, trying to think imaginatively, it may be that because of his social status, he's looked down on, he's ridiculed, and maybe the person he had to fight with ridiculed him, insulted him.
Sure. So again, this could be a kind of, I don't want to, it's a proto-racism. It's not that he's a race or not, that he is an outsider. It's a xenophobic, moment, and that because he is mixed of parentage, he will be ostracized his whole life. The way, for example, you put a kid in the third grade and they may have mixed parentage racially or and it happens. I mean, I want to share with you, one of these. I had this question come up to me once when we were thinking about what to do with our religious school, and there was another religious school, and I said, look, the question came up to me which was, what are you going to do with patrilineal Jews? So I said, what seemed to me to be a reasonable policy. I said, look, if you want to bring your child into the school as a patrilineal Jew, the most lenient thing I can do is say, yes, the child can come to the school, provided that the child at one point and the family at one point commits to have a circumcision and also a conversion. Okay, that the child be converted, because we do not accept patrilineal Jews as Jews. And I would want that family to know that child could not have a bar mitzvah in the synagogue as our rules are presently constituted. I will not bar mitzvah a patrilineal child. Well, that was too much for the parents of patrilineal children, the intermarried parents. And I respect their sensitivity here, which is they did not want to countenance the possibility that their child would be ostracized by other children in the classroom because of their status. So that's in a way, that's where I would come up against a brick wall, which is my rules demand of me a certain consistency with regard to patrilineality. And I have a mechanism for them to solve that problem, namely conversion. I wouldn't demand of them, the rigorous, 2 years or a year of study and all that. I would ask them simply that we would fill in the blanks, that proper circumcision and mikvah would take place. Those are for the most part, rather simple procedures. Even the symbolic circumcision is not as drastic as we would think. The mikveh certainly is not, and you could mediate those situations, but that was too much because of the possibility of being ostracized. Ilana, go ahead.
So I'm still thinking about the word vayetze. Maybe he went to get some ideas who he really is or who he really wants to
Very
be.
nice.
And maybe because his miserable life in a way, maybe that's why he cursed God.
Well, so this is all of these issues are brought up by the Midrash. The Midrash creates a scenario in which, because just fast forward here, he is from the tribe of Dan, and the question that the text deals with and will deal with in Bamidbar is, where does he camp, right? What it would be almost the equivalent of saying to like, what bunk do you go in, right? You're a member of the tribe of Dan. Your father is an Egyptian. Do you get to be in the full bunk or do you get to be in the mixed bunk, right? And they fight with him they tease him, and that's when he fights, and that's when in the moment he curses, and that's what the Midrash says. Let me go on, and we'll raise some other questions. Okay, Marlene, go ahead.
But when there's no punishment that carries on, why continue with this one where we have other rules that we do carry on and protect?
I need to say that a little clearer. That means why does it go into?
So we don't. Somebody who blasphemes, we don't take them out and stone them now.
No, we don't.
And God doesn't strike them dead.
Thank God.
They aren't consumed.
Yes. Well, we are talking about the Bible. That's number one. Number two is, we are trying to say here, and Nanette mentioned earlier the gatherer of sticks on Shabbat. What is it that makes these the capital offenses? And we could jump to that for a second, which is, every community has its boundaries in terms of excommunication. Now, I say thank God we don't have capital punishment for that. We live in a society governed by law, constitution, etc., where in certain states, of course, capital punishment is a punishment, but for the most part, in order to get to that, it's a rather rigorous procedure, and good for us for lots of reasons, including which the society has understood, the cost and benefit of capital punishment, and that often, we don't get it right, and that it will reflect more. It will reflect on our society if we do not have capital punishment. Notwithstanding that, what constitutes a crime that for which a person should be executed? Well, it's a crime that is so damaging to the community that it cannot be repaid other than with a life, and that for all intents and purposes here is murder. But the most severe forms of treason in the United States, and I have to investigate this, but treason is a death penalty issue when treason leads to and imperils the safety of other people. At the very most, or the very least, treason, when it's not punished by execution, people who commit treason are sentenced to life imprisonment, which for all intents and purposes is a kind of loss of life without the execution. Why? Because they've so endangered the United States that that's the punishment that is meted out on them. And we understand, I think we can understand that. We can understand why that punishment goes so What would constitute a punishment to in a community? When do you, I'm saying it, pejoratively, but when do we kick someone out? When do we kick someone out of the shul, right? When do we? I'm not going to say excommunicate, because excommunicate is a technical term that is only used, under certain circumstances and usually used by God. But we do excommunicate people. We put people into cherem, into a ban. If we were constituted in such a way with a bet din, we could do that. We could put someone in cherem for example, refusing to give a get to his wife. If a man refuses to give a get to his wife, and the court orders the man to give a get to his wife, and the man continues to refuse to give a get to his wife, then that individual, after a certain process, could be excommunicated, which means that individual may have no recourse to any Jewish community by halacha, is not to be accepted, is to be, publicly shamed upon entry into any Jewish establishment, etc., etc. So, why? And the reason is because this person is destabilizing the continuity of the people by denying the authority of the rabbis, and also by derogating the institution of marriage. That's why that person gets excommunicated. Synagogues will say, we rarely resort to this, but under extreme circumstances, when do you say you're no longer eligible for membership? Well, when you violate the rules of membership, and those typically are, the obligations that members have to the institution, which is, do you pay your dues, etc. If you've done something that severely, threatens the institution, the synagogue, let's say, probably could have the sanction of saying you no longer should become a member. I know as a rabbi and member of the rabbinical assembly, I have certain standards, right? One standard is, right, you the patrilineal standard, the intermarriage standard, and of course we all have to pay our dues to the rabbinical assembly. There's another standard, another set of standards which relate to placement. A rabbi, at least maybe these are the old rules. I don't know if these rules still abide, but if a congregation was in litigation with its rabbi, and another rabbi went and became was elected rabbi of a congregation which was in litigation with its previous rabbi, that rabbi that took the position could be thrown out of the rabbinical assembly because you broke the rules of the union, right? That's you did something that was unfair to the rest of the membership, and thereby imperiled the membership. So it used to be the joke among rabbis that rabbis could do whatever they want, but as long as they don't violate but if they violate the placement rules, then they get kicked out of the rabbinical assembly, and because it's a union behaving like a union. So the question then is always, what constitutes the boundary of behavior for a community, and to what extent this individual violates that boundary? And evidently he did. Okay, I just want to move quickly through some of the remaining questions, but then go to, if we do have a moment to share what is it. So, he takes this Egyptian. How could his mother be married to an Egyptian? B'toch b'nei Yisrael. He does this he goes out in the midst of Israel. So there's a public-private aspect to this. There's a private dimension to the conflict and a public dimension to the conflict. Vayinatzu b'machaneh, they fight in the camp. Does he make it a spectacle? And if so, if it becomes a spectacle, you as a spectator are now part of it, in the sense that, at what point do you become a referee and break them up, break it up, which should be your responsibility, okay? Ben HaYisraelit, V'ish HaYisraeli is named for the mother. Vayikov, the very difficult word. Vayikov means to kind of pierce or to undermine. Ben HaYisha, the HaYisraelit, et Hashem, he punctures the name, he destroys the name, which is exactly the question, what does that mean? by kalel. We have to interpret what that word is, and I'll do it in a second. So they bring him to Moses. This is a great part of the story, which is they all see him. They know intuitively that he's done something wrong, and they can't do anything without Moses's imprimatur to it. But it doesn't tell us what Moses responds. It does tell V'shem imo Shlomit ben Divrim lamatedan. Very strange that she's named here. We're going to leave that question out. Vayinichuhu b'mishmar lifrosh lahem al pi Adonai. What is the significant? They put him into prison. They put him in under guard in order for them lifrosh lahem al pi Adonai, a phrase which means to see what God is going to tell him to do. Okay, Moses doesn't know what to do, and my initial reaction to this, based on something that I read, is that isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? This actually goes to the heart of the story. In a despotic, dictatorial situation, when someone violates a rule, the dictator will go, like up or down, right? The dictator will have a very instinctual and immediate response to that and penalize the person according with, nothing logical, but almost always emotional, right? And the person, I want to think about the mafia here, okay? We don't really identify, the people in movies and in The Sopranos as people who have due process and think through things clearly. There is a code. The code is that if you violate the trust of the code, or the omerta, you pay with your life. Okay, if you turn on anyone, there's no process here. They will get you. They will get you at the first opportunity that they can, and the sentence is immediate. The person who's in charge will say, we got to get him, and then they'll set it up and they'll get him eventually. So Moses is not immediate in the execution or in the sentencing, but there's deliberation here, which means he really doesn't know what to do. And he really is quite concerned. And he really does have a puzzle because, and in here we want to say Moses, there is the moral aspect of Moses is, what's the punishment for this? What's the appropriate punishment for this, knowing that the boundary of the community has been violated? Marlene, then Susie, go ahead.
I understand that the Torah isn't linear, but we already got Yitro coming to Moses and saying, you can't do it all, so have this system of tens and fifties and hundreds and courts and other means of adjudication.
Right. So they obviously understand that this is not, I lent you my rake, you give me back my rake. Okay? This is not, a trivial case. The people understand that when it comes to God, we fast tracked to the Supreme Court, so to speak. Susie, go ahead.
Yeah. So this is not the only time when Moshe says, wait, I got to go ask the boss.
Yes.
It's something that it's without precedent. So this hasn't happened before, just as B'not Tzlafchad was a new thing that, so that's why he has to add. The other thing is that, what popped into my mind was, there's a baraita in Perek Migmar Hadin, which maybe already you know what I'm thinking of, I don't know, which is ahistorical, where the baraita takes credit, so to speak, for the execution of Jesus. It's Hesit v'hidiach et Yisrael. He led people. So it's like it's a theologically the supreme sin. The guy here in Vayikra has cursed God, and that's you can't do that. And in in the Baraita I mean, it's an ahistorical Baraita, but if you take it at its face value, it's you have somebody who's leading the people, a figure who's leading people away from Judaism. So you have to like cut it down.
Right. Okay. Let me cut to the chase with regard to what it means to curse. And this is from an article. I picked it up on the 929 website. Ma perush lekalel Elohi. What does it mean to lekalel God? What is ha'im ha'el she'enenu nitan lahagdara? Can the God that is unimaginable and irreducible to any definition, could he be insulted by a curse? I mean, after all, God is God. Why is God being insulted here with a curse? Ma ze bichlal klala. What is klala altogether? So he says, b'mekorot rabim b'sipur mikra'i, we have the idea of a curse as the opposite of a blessing. For example, when God blesses Abram, I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. Now, I often say that, and I think that is the one fundamental truth of, one of many fundamental truths of Jewish life. Those who bless us will be blessed. Those who curse us will be cursed. And that Yaakov, when he steals the blessing of Esav, there's a blessing and a curse there as well. He said, but many instances where we have a different meaning of blessing, not opposite to curse, but kalala, opposite to something else. And he goes as follows. I never saw this before, and it's a great word, a great little Dvar Torah here. The word klala nigzeret mehamila kal. The word klala comes from the word kal, which means little. And the opposite of little is heavy, or light, Kal is light, kaved is heavy. So you have klala as the opposite of kavod, of honor. When Hagar says to, when Hagar gets pregnant and Sarah starts, being manipulative, Sarah saw that Hagar became pregnant, and she started to demean her, and that Hagar started to demean her mistress. In the case of Eli in the book of Samuel, it says, those who honor me, I will honor, and those who belittle me, I will curse. And so we have blessing and curse as one parallel pair, but honor and curse, another parallel pair. It means there's honoring and belittling. Belittling is klala, and honoring is giving weight to. Okay, so there are two clusters of meaning with regard to this word. One is I bless you, I curse you. One is I honor you, I give you tremendous weight and honor, or I belittle you. Okay, and so it goes on. The opposite of the command to honor parents, we have kaved avicha vetimecha, honor your father and mother, but it's mikalel aviv mo, if you belittle your parents, mochumat. Hu hatzad ashlili shel mitzvat kaved avicha vetimecha. So he's saying, in legal terms, lekalel perusho, the meaning of kalel is likpor b'samchuto shel bal samchut. It is to deny or to degrade or to belittle the authority of those who are in authority. Litalem misamchuta shel horim. It is to belittle or to ignore the authority of parents. Limrod b'melech hachuki, to rebel against the sovereign, legal sovereign. Ola kel rosh be'eluto shel Elohim, or to make light out of God, God who is the authority over all. Ha'onish al klala shekazahu mavet. The punishment for this kind of belittling is death, because it undermines the very foundations of the society and the state. Without recognition of authority, kitzara haderech el ha'anarchia, the short distance exists towards anarchy. So what he's saying here is something that I think is intuitive. It must have been that this transgression was so destabilizing that it threatened the continuity and it threatened the stability of the whole people. That by undermining the authority of God, no less, what you do is you bring the community to the tipping point of anarchy, and now the people take their matter into their own hands, not by immediately punishing this person, but by trying to go through, I'm going to call it a quasi-constitutional process, where they bring this individual to the Supreme Court. Now Moses deliberates on this, as he should, and then this individual meets a sad end, which I'm not proud of. Okay, and I'll say it in that way. I'm not proud of the fact that the people go to stone him, and that I think, because it borders on what we spoke about earlier. It borders on spectacle. The people, those who heard him put their hands on him as if to indicate that this is the individual who is going to take out our, the stain that has been made on us. Since we heard this, we need to, atone and purge ourselves from this. And then everybody throws stones at him. They stone him. And you can imagine that in the process of stoning him, there were people that did not do that lightly, that did it with gusto. And that I think appeals to the sense of terror, curiosity, and abandon and violence here. That the Bible speaks to. The Bible speaks to this deep humanity in the same way that, if you are a fan at a hockey game and you erupt at a fight and get tremendous joy in this kind of ugliness, that it speaks to our humanity, and there's the reason for that is because on the ice they're acting out in kind of real and punishing blows the deep rooted yearnings for violence that we have, violence and revenge, and the kind of thing that we want. And as Stanley said earlier, without sublimating that, you basically can devolve into an anarchic society. It's interesting that in a hockey match, it's confined for the most part onto the rink with a rule structure in place that the pugilists are put into the penalty box. I mean, it is kind of mind-boggling that the only place where it's legal to punch another person is on a rink. Okay. And there are rules for that. Anyway, this is where we'll have to conclude, I see. So unless you have a question, Bob, go ahead.
Not a question, but just a comment. Acknowledging all the interpersonal, sociological, political analysis that you put forth, for me, this story speaks in an additional way, and that is that there is probably a blasphemer within all of us.
Indeed.
And the whole idea of killing the blasphemy within ourselves, putting it out, brings in a different personal sense as to what this may mean. Pharaoh blasphemed, didn't he? But
yeah,
we didn't kill Pharaoh. God did that for us.
I read a very interesting Hebrew poem on this. I didn't bring it because it's really complicated, but the poet says something to exactly what you're saying. He says, I took my own blasphemer out of my house and I stoned him. It was beautiful. It's a beautiful poem. Stanley, go ahead.
I just have to add, you'll appreciate this. I remember going bowling in Saint-Agathe-des-Monts
Okay.
Saint-Gath is a small town about an hour from
Sure.
Montreal in the Laurentian Mountains. And
Yes.
there on the wall, there's a big sign that said, Ne blasphémez pas,
The
which means,
blasphemy
of
part.
course, don't curse. So, I mean, they're Catholic here. So a
Sure.
Catholic church must take this very seriously
The
too. Didn't
blasphemy
say, or
part,
else you'll
right?
be killed.
But
But,
yeah.
you know,
The Catholic curse, especially in Quebec French, they are taking the words are sacred words. They've inverted, things that have to do with Christianity, and those are the things that become the curse. So that would
that's
offend the
right.
sensibility, right?
There are a lot of curses that draw on sort of religious imagery, saints and
Absolutely,
so on. So,
absolutely,
you know,
right.
Uh,
Good.
there's also there's also har habracha
Yeah.
har הקללה, har
Yes.
Ebal and har
Nice.
Prizim,
Nice.
where
Yeah.
they spoke about
Opposites.
blessings and about cursing.
Curses.
person.
Excellent. We'll leave it there. Next week, I didn't announce this. I will not be here next week. God willing, we have an engagement party in California. So, provided Newark Airport is functional, I will I will be there. God
Nice.
forbid. Okay. But everyone have a good week. We will see you soon. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye
Thank you.
bye.